This is how investor terms work if you're buying a business and not using an SBA loan. There are three components. First, your CEO salary, which is sometimes called a management fee. Second, a transaction fee. And third, carried interest, or carry, which takes place after a hurdle rate. And we'll explain what all these things mean. Let's imagine that you're buying a business that does $3 million of EBITDA for a 5x multiple, which is a $15 million purchase price. Let's assume that $7.5 million of that is senior debt, $2.5 million is a seller note, and $5 million is equity. And let's assume that you're investing $500,000 of personal capital in the deal. Up first is your CEO salary, which is typically the greater of 5% of EBITDA or a floor value, perhaps $150K to $200K, depending on the size of the business. Next is equity, which is determined by your personal investment and also your transaction fee. You'll earn a transaction fee, typically 2% of the enterprise value. 2% of $15 million is $300,000, which is almost always rolled into the transaction. This means that your equity ownership is calculated as if the $300,000 rolled transaction fee was cash that you contributed to the deal as well. This means that your total cash investment is counted to be $500,000 plus $300,000, and the denominator of the ownership fraction is now $5.3 million of total equity, which means that you'll own $800,000 divided by $5.3 million, which equals 15% of the business on day one. Finally, and the most complicated part, is carry, which kicks in after cash investors, including yourself and including your transaction fee, have received their invested capital back. Typically, carry for you as the sponsor, the person putting the deal together, is 20%, which means that you'll get 20% of all proceeds from distributions or from an exit after cash investors, including yourself, have received their initially invested capital back plus a hurdle rate, which is typically 8 to 12%. We're gonna have to draw a diagram to explain how this works in practice called a waterfall diagram. Let's assume that you and other investors have put a total of $5 million into this business. And then let's assume that you generate $5 million of additional value through distributions and then ultimately through an exit. So there's a total of $10 million of value now to be distributed. The first step is a return of capital. So everyone who invested cash, including yourself and including your transaction fee, receive their capital back. So in this case, $5 million goes off the top to repay everyone for the $5 million that they invested. And that leaves another $5 million to continue to be distributed. The second step is that everyone who contributed cash, including yourself, receives a preferred return. And in this case, we've modeled it as 8%. And so everyone gets an additional $400,000, which is 8% of $5 million in additional distributions. That leaves $4.6 million still to distribute. Now that investors have gotten their money back, your carry kicks in. And your carry says that you should receive 20% of all profitability of this deal. And investors have already gotten $400,000 back. And so you need to get an additional distribution to catch up or to make yourself whole so that you have received 20% of profits. And the way the math works is that you are receiving a distribution of $100,000. So that means that you've now received $100,000 out of the total of $500,000 of profits that have been distributed so far, which is 20%. And so all is right in the world. There's now $4.5 million still to distribute, and that takes place based on an 80-20 split, where you get 20% or $900,000, and then investors, which actually includes yourself, again, for your capital investment and your transaction fee, receive $3.6 million. If we do the math in a simple way and ignore your transaction fee, but just assume that you put in $500,000 and that you have 20% carry, you'll end up getting $900,000 from your direct ownership in the business, your original $500K that you invested, plus $100,000 from your catch-up, plus $900,000 from the rest of your carry, for a total of $1.9 million. To keep the math simple, we didn't include your transaction fee, and had that included, it probably would have bumped you up by another roughly $500,000 for a total of $2.4 million. In case you're curious, this management fee plus transaction fee plus carry structure is how independent sponsor deals work. Feel free to watch this video a few times if it seems overwhelming. It'll definitely make more sense with each iteration, and this is the way that basically all investments are structured when someone's buying a business and not using an SBA loan, and so it's good to understand. If you're buying a business and looking for equity capital to get the deal done, we'd love to chat. We have a committed capital fund that exists specifically to invest in people like you, and you can learn more at entrepreneurialcapital.com.